WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, X, and our website, www.wvtcdetroit.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users. Thank you for tuning to WVTC Radio Detroit and the Community Bell Show with your host, former Wayne County Commissioner Edna Bell. Stay tuned for insightful information Detroiters will find valuable. Text a friend and tell them to watch with you for news you can use. And now, your host, Edna Bell.
Hello. Good afternoon. It is Monday at 4 o'clock, so it must be the Community Bell Show. How are you this wonderful afternoon? I know you're warm, and I know there are those of you out there who are saying it is much too hot. Well, I am not one of those people. I love me some hot weather because it doesn't last long here in Michigan. I want it as long as I can get it. Get yourself a cold drink, sit by a fan, or get you some air, or get by the water and relax and enjoy this warm weather because it'll be cold in a couple of days. You know, it doesn't last long here in Michigan. But good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me as always on Monday at 4 o'clock. We got lots and lots and lots and lots to talk about today. But I'm going to talk about good news first. The good news. The 100th anniversary of New Prospect Missionary Baptist Church. That's good news. For anything to last 100 years is good news, but for a church to last 100 years is extra special good news. And so, to my church family, New Prospect Missionary Baptist Church, congratulations. And I'll be saying this for the next few months because we've got stuff going on. First of all, let me tell you about the block party that we will be having at New Prospect Missionary Baptist Church. It will be on August 17th, Livernois and Pembroke and Stopel, which is right next to us, right across the street from Pasteur School. We'll have face painting. We'll have games. For those of you who play bid whist, we're going to have a bid whist going on. Bid whist, going to have a little bingo going on, little spades, even some Uno. And we'll have games for the children. We'll have food. And we're just going to have ourselves a good time as we talk about the ministries at New Prospect. We got lots and lots and lots of things for you to get involved with at New Prospect. Whatever it is you think you want to get involved in, we've got it. We've got the youth ministry, the young adult ministry, the choir, the usher board, young adult usher board, senior usher board. We've got it all. We've got our married couples ministry you can get involved in. We've got the men's ministry you can get involved in, the men's Bible study you can get involved in, the seniors Bible study. We've got quilting you can get involved in. We've got all sorts of things at New Prospect that you can get involved in to serve the Lord in whatever way is best for you. And we would love to have you come join us on the 17th of August at New Prospect Missionary Baptist Church to hear about all the things that you can get involved in your community because it is your community and we would love to have you. We'll have a little food for you, some games for you, few prizes. So come on out. Remember, August 17th, New Prospect Missionary Baptist Church for our block party. And let me make sure I've got the times for you. I think it is from 11 o'clock until 5 o'clock. So we'll be there all day long at New Prospect Missionary Baptist Church for our block party. So come on out and join us. We would love to have you. Then, as we continue celebrating our 100th anniversary, we will have a celebration banquet at the Rooster Tail. And you know, the Rooster Tail does it up right. We'll be at the Rooster Tail on October the 27th. October 27th, the Rooster Tail. We have a few tickets left, not many. We sold out the first batch. We had to go back and talk to the Rooster Tail to see if they could give us an expanded seating, and they were able to do that. So if you're interested in celebrating with us for our 100th anniversary banquet on the 27th of October at the Rooster Tail, let us know because tickets are going fast, but you will absolutely love it. You know, we got lots of churches in Detroit. Not a whole lot have lasted 100 years. And we have been blessed with some of the best ministers you will ever hear. When I joined New Prospect, the Reverend S.L. Whitney was my pastor. And I'm telling you, Reverend Whitney was a pastor's pastor. Reverend Whitney was my guy. Love him dearly. Once Reverend Whitney went on to be with the Lord, we got somebody that just shook it all up and continued to move forward with the Lord. And that was my pastor again, the Reverend Johnson. She came from Hartford Avenue Baptist Church. How about that? But my, Reverend Johnson, I can't begin to tell you just what a wonderful, not just preacher and pastor and leader, but just a good person. She was just a good person. And so she was our pastor when she went on to be with the Lord 8 years ago. Help me, Jesus. We still don't have a pastor, but that's okay. We're going to wait for the Lord to lead us. And when it's God's time, when he says it's time, it will be time. It will be time. But we have three wonderful young people at our church, Reverend Craig Esther, Reverend April Hearn, Reverend Carnell Richardson, who were the pastoral leadership team who has led our church for the last 8 years. Reverend Carnell Richardson has been called to preach at a church in Ypsilanti, Metropolitan Baptist Church in Ypsilanti. And we are just happy for he and his family. We pray for them, continued blessings. So Reverend Carnell Richardson is now gone. This past Sunday, it was announced that Reverend April Hearn would also be leaving. The last Sunday she will be at our church will be the last Sunday in July. So if you'd love to hear her preach at our church for the last time, as one of the leadership persons in our church, come see Reverend Hearn the last Sunday in July, Reverend Dr. April Hearn. And then Craig Esther is now the lead pastor. He um, has done a wonderful job, will continue doing a wonderful job. And both April and Craig grew up in our church, baptized in our church, grew up in that church from little bitty people. And so we've been blessed to have some wonderful, wonderful leadership at our church. But I want you to think about supporting New Prospect Baptist Church and its efforts with the Community Block Club, with our banquet. And if you'd like to take out an ad in our anniversary booklet, you can do that until the end of July. You're able to do that. Take out a full page ad, quarter page ad, however you'd like to do it. Just call our church office and you'll be able to do that. And we would love to have you do that. We would love to have you do it. Reverend April preached yesterday, and it was quite a sermon because the title of the sermon was Houston, We Have a Problem. And Lord knows we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem in this nation. Houston, we have a problem in our city. Houston, we have a problem. And she used a text from Habakkuk. And it's interesting because the text simply says that, okay, God sometimes uses unconventional things to do the impossible. He uses unconventional things to do the impossible, and he is going to do something that you won't even believe when you see it. But God is working. Something is going to happen. And obviously, I can't tell you when. But as we see all the things that are going on in this country, in the nation, God is about to do something that even though we see it, we may not even believe it, but God is about to work something. So just sit back. Don't panic. Don't panic. Just continue to trust and believe that God is working what he works. Just believe that and continue to do what you're supposed to do. Because sometimes we get so busy and caught up in what somebody else is doing and what somebody else is saying and how they're doing it that we forget that we're supposed to do what we do. We're supposed to do what we do because we know what to do. People don't have to tell you what's right and what's wrong. You know what's right and wrong. Don't tell me that you don't know what's right and wrong. Most of us know what's right and wrong. We really do. And as Reverend April said yesterday, people steal and cheat and lie, but that is no justification for somebody shooting you. It just isn't. On this past weekend, we saw the attempted assassination of a presidential candidate. No matter how you feel about that person, there is no justification for violence. There just isn't. So we wish him well. I wish him well, that his family and he will be safe and sound. And understand that there is no justification for violence. Just because I don't like you and I don't like what you said doesn't give me the right to hurt you. It just doesn't. And I know that some of us get so caught up in what's going on with A, B, C, and D that we forget about E, F, and G. We forget that there's some other people involved. For instance, whoever wanted to hurt the former president, they hurt somebody else. A man who was there just to support the president. And people support him. That's okay. I support who I support. You support who you got to support. But it is not right for you to hurt somebody else just because they don't agree with you. It is not right. And here this man, a fireman, had a family. He's there celebrating on this wonderful afternoon, and he gets killed for something he's not even involved in. Wrong. Just wrong. And we need to check ourselves. We need to check ourselves big time, because anytime you start hurting other folks, trying to get at somebody else, something is wrong with you. Something is definitely wrong with you, and you need to check yourself. And as I talk about that, let's talk about what has happened here in our own city over the last couple of weeks. Young people deciding that they can do whatever they want to do, no matter the impact on other people. Wrong, just wrong. You can't decide that because you want to do something, it's right. And you can hurt anybody you want to hurt. And that's okay. That is not okay. That is just not okay. And so we have people who talk about guns. It is not okay for everybody to have a gun. I don't care what anybody says. It is not okay for everybody to have a gun. Now, I know some of these people talk about the Second Amendment, but the Second Amendment was put in when there were people on the prairies, there was no law. You were out there trying to survive, and anybody might come to your house, and because nobody out there but you and your little family, you needed a gun. Anybody in that situation needed a gun. That is not the case now. Everybody should not have a gun because everybody isn't responsible enough to be able to have a gun. And if in fact you are going to be able to buy one, you ought to have to go through a psychological profile. Somebody ought to have to say that you are mentally capable of using the gun properly. And somebody ought to say that, okay, if it turns out that you don't use it properly, they're going to take the gun. Now, that's what should happen. And I know that the Supreme Court, again, that's a whole nother story. Maybe we may talk about them, but today, Supreme Court did recently rule that if you are convicted of domestic violence, you could not have access to a gun legally. I think that's appropriate. That is a good decision. Because again, if you have already shown yourself to be violent against your spouse, and typically the spouse is a female, every now and then it's a male, but typically 99% of the time it's a female that has been hurt because of domestic violence, you should not have a gun. Because typically it's the female that gets shot by somebody in a domestic violence situation. And so, yeah, you shouldn't have a gun. And there are many other situations where people should not have access to weapons. If you have some other mental health issues, you shouldn't have access to a weapon. If you're going to have a weapon, you ought to have to be able to go through a training class that teaches you how to use that weapon, when to use that weapon, how to clean it so you don't end up killing yourself. I mean, there's some basic stuff that ought to go in as reasonable people. Clearly, some people are not reasonable and shouldn't have a gun. And so I'm just saying, weapons in the hands of wrong people cause other people, innocent people, to get hurt. So now we've got all these young people and some old people running around with guns around our city. We've got them doing what they call pop-up block parties. Now, I had never heard of that until I was leaving my daughter's house on the 4th of July. And I was going down Joy Road, just east of Wyoming. And what do I see? All these kids, young people, in cars in a parking lot of a business who was closed. And they're partying. And now they're pulling up, they're parking on both sides of the street. They got loud music playing, they're screaming, hollering, drinking. That was the first time I ever saw or heard of a pop-up party until they had the party on the east side where 19 people were shot. 19 shot, and I think 1 or 2 killed. That is just not acceptable behavior, people. That is just not acceptable behavior. And now there was another pop-up party just this past week of 500 people. How do you have a pop-up party in the streets of 500 people? And there was one, I understand, on 6 Mile near Swanson's funeral home. How do you do this? What makes you think that you're so bad that you can do whatever the heck you want around property that is not yours? Now, if you have a property that will hold 500 people, go to your property and have a party with those 500 people on your own property. But don't be so blatant as to decide that I'm going to take over this street at this point in time and I'm going to have a party. And then when the police arrest you, you got a concern about it. Something's wrong with you. I'm just saying, something is wrong with you. You need to check yourself and rethink about that. Rethink about that, because you can't decide that you're going to use somebody else's property to have an event, and that's okay. And then everybody else up and down the street decide, oh, there's a party. I'm going to stop and be a part of that. No, that's not how the world works. Come on now, people. I know you know better. I just know you know better. Think about what it is you are doing. Think about the impact it has on other people. Think about what would happen if somebody popped up at your mother's house with 20, 30, 40, 50 cars and 10 or 20, 40, 50, 100 people. What would you think about that? You wouldn't like it very much, would you? Suppose they pop up at your house, in front of your house. How you gonna think about that? You wouldn't like that very much, would you? You know, this is so simple. Do unto others. We just finished talking about the Bible. Lord knows. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You don't like it. What makes you think somebody else would like it? I really think that sometimes we're just not thinking. Stop for a minute and think about how some of this impacts you, and the people around you. Suppose, now just suppose you had a child, I should say. You had a child, and your child were walking down the street trying to get home, and they can't get down the street because there's a pop-up party. And then somebody starts shooting, and your child is just trying to get home, and your child gets shot. Think about this family on the east side whose child was on his way to college, was home for the weekend from college, and he gets shot and killed. How horrible is that? Just how horrible is that? So I just really, really think that we as a community need to get a lot more involved in how this situation pops up. How about that? I said pop up. But how we need to think about that. Not only do we as a community, I think we as a church family need to get a lot more involved in what's going on. You just can't have a church sitting in a community and the only times your doors are open is on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. You've got to do a whole lot more than just have that building. And I must say, and I go back to my church home, New Prospect Missionary Baptist Church, we've adopted the school across the street from us and have been there for years and years and years. Pastor, we adopted that school when Pastor Johnson was there. We gave them if they said they needed a copier, we made sure they had a copier. If those babies needed uniforms, we made sure that the church provided uniforms. We've got a young man now who is working on his Eagle Scout badge. And his project is to provide fun books for the school library for ages kindergarten through 6th grade. So if you want to donate something, drop it by New Prospect next Sunday. Books, just books. Doesn't have to be inexpensive, but just a fun book for children to read. But we have supported Pastor School, and we will continue to support Pastor School. We help with tutoring. Again, we help with whatever they say they need. If they can't do it, we find a way to do that. But that's what every church ought to be doing. Every church ought to have a school in their community that they have adopted. And if you don't have one close to you, go find one that isn't close to you. Go adopt them and work with them. But I think that should be an obligation of every church to be involved in the lives of the children around that church and in the school around them. That's an obligation I think that we have to live up to. And so there's so much we can do. Because if we want young people to do the kinds of things that we believe are right based on Bible, we have to model that behavior. They can't see us out there cussing and screaming and fighting and not think that, oh, I guess they do it. I can do it too. No, you can't do that. You have to model the behavior you want young people to show. So if you see young people out in the streets doing some crazy stuff, know that they saw it someplace. They saw it at home. They saw it somewhere. They just don't come up with this stuff out of the clear blue sky. They have to have seen it someplace. And if you see young people using all the profanity, they didn't just pop up learning profanity out of nowhere. They heard it someplace. I've heard mothers in grocery stores in the street talking to little babies, 2, 3, 4 years old, using language that you shouldn't use with an adult, let alone a child. Bring your so and so over here. I mean, just that's not how you talk to children. They model the behavior you show them. And so you need to make sure that you are doing the kinds of things that are going to make us have successful young people who are able to take care of themselves. And when they decide to have a family, they can take care of that family. There are all sorts of things that we can do, little things. Doesn't cost us anything. Just say hi, smile at somebody. Just how are you today? Doesn't cost you a thing to do that. And we need to begin to model that behavior a lot more than we have. Because I'm telling you, people do what they see. People react the way they see others reacting. And we need to make sure that we are providing that role model for young people. No way would they do that if we were doing what we were supposed to do all the time. We are going to take a quick break for just 1 second. Um, and when we come back, we're going to talk about this some more. But I want you to know that there's some things that we can all do, some things that we can all do that will help us all, not just the folks who we are close to, but those folks who we may not know. They may need a word of encouragement too. Even though you don't know somebody, you can be encouraged by saying to them, can I help you? How are you today? How's everything going? Is there anything I can do to help you? And it matters what happens in the home. I'm telling you, it matters what happens in the home. It matters what happens in and around our churches. It matters. It matters. It matters. Be back in a minute.
Because I live in Detroit, I was able to get tuition-free college through the Detroit Promise. I feel very fortunate working with the Detroit Promise. They were able to afford me so many opportunities. I'm currently studying media production and journalism at University of Michigan Dearborn. I'm looking to take my talents further into the production industry, short films. I love working with people here, and this is where I want to be. And that's why I'm Detroit for life. Detroit for life.
And I talked about how we need to model the behavior to help our young people. Sometimes they make a mistake. And when they make that mistake, they need somebody to help them realize that. And when they make it, somebody to give them another chance to say, okay, I know you made a mistake, but that's okay. We're going to help you out. We're going to help you mitigate that mistake so that you can get back on your feet and so you can be a contributing citizen. There's something called Project Clean Slate. And Project Clean Slate is one that helps young folk who have made that mistake and have decided, gee, I'm not going to do that again. I've learned my lesson. I hear you. I hear you. I've learned my lesson. Project Clean Slate helps them because, there was a time, and in some cases, some places, there still are times when you make a mistake and you could forget it because there is no second chance. There's no way for you to recover from that mistake. And oftentimes when they make that mistake and you don't give them a chance to recover, they go make another one. and another one, because he didn't have a second chance to change their lives, to turn their lives around. Well, Project Clean Slate gives them that chance to turn their life around, to be able to get a job. Because there was a time if you checked, yes, I have a felony, you could forget it. That application was thrown out the window. Project Clean Slate allows you to get rid of that check mark. You don't have to check that I have a felony because you've been able to expunge your record and to change things and to change things for you and your family, your children, your wife, your parents, people who love you. Project Clean Slate is a free expungement program for Detroiters. If you're looking at the screen, it's www.detroitmi.gov/Detroit for Life. www.detroitmi.gov/Detroit for Life. It will allow you to change your life, to change the life of your family, your wife, your children, and give you a second chance to become that productive citizen that you knew you could do. You knew you could do it. You knew what you were doing wrong in the first place. You knew it. So it gives you a chance this time to say, okay, God, thank you very much, everybody. I blew it the first time. I'm not going to do it again. I'm going to get out there and do the right thing. And Project Clean Slate gives you a chance to do that. Go to that website. Go to that website. Fill out the form. Do everything they ask you to do. That's your second chance. That is your second chance at life. It is your second chance to provide a better life for your family, for your children. We just finished talking about children and how children need to see positive role models. And many of you may not remember this, but when I grew up, everybody's daddy went to work. They went to work. They didn't have jobs that set them behind desks. They went to work. They worked hard. And about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it was coming home time for the fathers. And everybody's father was at work. It made a difference because when children see fathers going to work and coming home and taking care of their families and then being active with their children, it makes a difference. And when children see fathers in the communities taking care of their families, it makes a difference. Believe me, it makes a difference. I remember my mother would make me comb my hair. She'd change my clothes and comb my hair because daddy was coming home from work. And his little girl had to be cute when daddy came home from work, nice and clean. And she was cooking dinner. But it made a difference in those communities when they saw men going to work. So Project Clean Slate gives you a chance to be that kind of father that goes to work, comes home every day, and takes care of his family. And the people on your block see you going to work every day. I mean, you could be the role model. You could be the role model for the guy down the street who may not have had a job and said, wow, if the guy down there has got a clean slate, he went to jail, he made a mistake, but now he's got a job. Maybe I'll try it too. You could be the role model for your whole block that says that, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. And then two more folks on the block say the same thing. And then two more folks on the block say the same thing. Before you know it, you got a whole block full of men going to work and coming home and taking care of their families, and the children on the block watching this because they want to emulate what they see. They want to emulate that these men are taking care of their families. If they don't see that, how are they going to know how to act when they get grown? How are they going to know how to take care of their families? So yeah, that's what happens when you have men in the community who do their job, who protect the children, who protect their families. It spreads. It spreads like wildfire. And before you know it, oh my goodness, you got a community full of folk taking care of their families, going to work every day, coming home and eating, cutting the grass, talking to their neighbors. It matters what young people see. It matters what young people hear because that determines what young people will do. A few moments ago, you just saw the ad about Detroit Promise. And Detroit Promise is one of those wonderful things for Detroit young people who graduate from Detroit public schools, who live in Detroit. An interesting little story. My grandson just graduated from high school, and we were in one of the assemblies, and they were had for parents to talk about, okay, these children are seniors now. This is what you have to look forward to. This is the kind of things you're going to need to do. And this is an opportunity for your young people if they live in Detroit, Detroit Promise. But they have to have attended Detroit public schools and they must have lived in Detroit for at least 2 years prior to graduation. Now, that doesn't mean that you can use your Southfield or your Bloomfield or your Oakland County address. And so, but she went to Detroit Public School. Doesn't matter. She didn't live in Detroit. Why does that matter? Because the monies are grant dollars, but they're also sometimes some of this is taxpayer dollars. So these folks who live in Detroit are reaping some benefit from their taxpayer dollars. So you just can't send your child to Detroit Public School and think you're going to get Detroit Promise because you didn't live in Detroit. So no, you can't fix it. No, well, her father lived in Detroit, but did she live with her father? No, her address is in Southfield or Oakland County someplace, or Macomb County, or Washington County. There was one young man from when my grandson graduated who lived in Ann Arbor and drove from here to Ann Arbor every day so he could go to Cass Technical High School. He couldn't get Detroit Promise because he didn't live in Detroit. So, benefit for you, Detroit Promise provides you with full ride scholarships. Do you hear me? Full ride scholarship. If you graduate from a Detroit public high school and you live in Detroit, you get a full ride. And there's there's a caveat here. You got to go to school every day too. You just can't say, oh, I finally made it. Oh my goodness, I graduated. No, there's another piece to this. You got to go to school and you've got to get good grades. You've got to have at least a 2.5 grade point average. You got that? You have to have at least a grade point average that said, not only did I go to school, I accomplished something. So make sure that you look at Detroit Promise. We've got young folks who are going into their senior year in September. If your child hasn't lived in Detroit, you better figure out a way to get them to Detroit and backdate some of those, whatever it is, so that they can spend here for 2 years. I don't know how I shouldn't tell you to do that. I didn't tell you to do that. Did I tell you to do that? No, I didn't do that. But figure out a way for your child, if you want your child to get a full ride scholarship to college, live in Detroit, succeed, go to school, and it's yours. It's yours. Another benefit of being a Detroiter. But let me go back to Project Clean Slate, because that is so important. That is so important. That is so important. That is so important. Because you can now get a job, a good paying job. There are jobs at the Carpenters and Millwrights local training center up on Grand River and American. You can get a job. You can get free training, and you will get, and the job starts you at $22 an hour, and you have a skill that will last you a lifetime, a skill that will get you jobs even at greater rates than that as the more proficient you get at that training. So yeah, there are things that you need to do, but now because you're part of Project Clean Slate, you can do that. You can get the free training. You can get the job that pays a good salary with healthcare benefits and vacation and sick time, all those kinds of good things that you want to look at when you are looking for a job. Project Clean Slate allows you to do that. But it isn't just for you, it allows our whole community to benefit from your being able to take care of yourself and your family. Because if you can take care of your family, they don't have to be on welfare. They don't have to get food stamps. You're taking care of them, right? That's a responsibility that fathers have. And so there's so many things that Project Clean Slate will allow you to do. I'm just so happy that we have the opportunity to share that with you, and you have a chance to take the opportunity to benefit from it. It's good stuff. And make the full circle. The full circle says that you are now a community person benefiting from something that your city is doing. Now you can give back. And you have an obligation to give back to your community. I don't care what you say, you have an opportunity, an obligation to give back. You give back in different ways. The way you give back could be that I'm going to make sure that my children go to school every day. And not only do they go to school every day, they are acting like they got some sense when they're there. They go to school, they're learning. And I'm not going to be one of those parents that go up to the school raising all sorts of heck because the teacher sent my child to the office because my child was misbehaving. That's your opportunity to be a good citizen and to be a good parent, to say to that child, not on my watch. You will not disrespect the teacher or the school or anybody else in this building. You will go to school and you will act like you've got some sense because that reflects on me. If you go in there acting crazy, then they're going to think I'm crazy. And I'm not crazy. And I'm not going to allow you to make them think that I'm crazy because you're acting like you have lost your mind. Going into the school, talking back to the teacher, not doing your homework, fighting, using abusive language. That's just not acceptable behavior. However, because I am now a contributing member to my community, I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen because my behavior will reflect in you when you go into that building. Because when you go to that building acting like that, that reflects on me, and I'm just not having it. You're not going to make me look crazy because you're acting crazy. So you're not going to act crazy because you're my child, right? That was one thing that was not acceptable. Not acceptable. And it shouldn't be acceptable now under any circumstances. Under any circumstances. So I just want to say to my listening audience, think about how you are preparing yourself. Think about how you're preparing your children. Think about your contribution to your community. Think about your contribution to your church and all the people that are around you. Think about your obligation, because it is an obligation that you have to take care of yourself and your family and your community, because the community is only as good as you are. If you're not good, the community isn't good. You're part of that. Thank you so much for joining me this wonderful Monday afternoon at 4 o'clock on the Community Bell Show. I want you to think about all those things because our children are important enough for us to take the extra time to do the right thing. They just are. Have a great day. We'll see you next Monday at 4 o'clock, the Community Bell Show. Have a great time.
I was following the process of applying, and I was getting rejection letters. That was kind of disheartening, but I just continued to push through. Usually when I got to that question of, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Sometimes I would check yes and provide supporting documentation. I tried to do the expungement process on my own. I felt like I was being sent on a wild goose chase. Ultimately, I finished the process, but as a result of me having more than one felony at the time, I was rejected and I couldn't apply again for like 36 months. So after that time had passed, I heard about Project Clean Slate. As a result of Project Clean Slate, I've been able to advance my career. It was a seamless process. I want to say like 8 or 9 months in total. Initially, I submitted the online application. Soon after that, I was contacted for fingerprinting. After fingerprinting, I had my hearing with the judge and the prosecuting attorney. After that, I was notified that my record was sealed and I was no longer a convicted felon.
Thank you for listening to Community Bell with your host, former Wayne County Commissioner Edna Bell. This broadcast was brought to you by WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, our website, www.wvtcradio.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users. If you've enjoyed this broadcast, tell a friend to tune in. We'll see you next Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern to the Community Bell Show, right here on WVTC Radio Detroit. You're listening.
It's time to rise up for healthier births with Project Healthy Arrival. At WVTC Detroit, we're on a mission to do our part to achieve zero preventable deaths and zero health disparities in Michigan. But we can't do it alone. Disparities still plague our communities, especially for Black and brown mothers and babies. Let's break barriers and build bridges for better health. Together, we'll ensure every birth is a joyous occasion. For more info, visit www.michigan.gov, Advancing Healthy Births. Remember, WVTC's Project Healthy Arrival is powered by grants from the Southeast Michigan Perinatal Improvement Coalition, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and United Way for Southeastern Michigan. Go to your Apple or Google Play Store and download the WVTC Gospel Radio app today. You can also say, Alexa, play WVTC Radio Skills.
Would you like to play WVTC Radio Network?
Absolutely. Download it today.
You're listening to WVTC Gospel Radio Detroit, and we're flowing in the Spirit.